welcome today to the show Mr. Allan Parker, president of the Justice Foundation, and who I consider to be one of the best First Amendment lawyers and certainly the best lawyer in America on the right to life. And his efforts over the years in representing Ms. McCarvey and Ms. Kano in attempts to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decisions that legalized abortion on demand have been noted all over the world. Allan, we're so pleased to have you today, and we know that you're a wealth of information, and we certainly want to get an update on what's happening around the world. Is the moral outcry there to get these decisions overturned?
Well, thank you for having me on the program, and thank you for everyone who's watching and listening to us today. I'm the lead attorney for the moral outcry to end abortion in America. And that phrase actually comes from Justice Scalia himself while he was alive. There were a group of people praying in front of the Supreme Court with life tape across their mouth, and Justice Scalia sent someone out to speak to them and to thank them for praying. But he said, "Where is the moral outcry against abortion in America?" And so the moral outcry petition is a way to harness the moral outcry, and every person in America can sign the petition, and then we as the lawyers for Melinda Thibault, the founder of the moral outcry petition, will bring those names and 5 very persuasive legal reasons why Roe v. Wade should be reversed to the Supreme Court itself. In multiple friend of the court briefs, in multiple cases, until we literally, and by God's grace, persuade the Supreme Court that it is time to reverse Roe v. Wade in America.
Now, there's terminology in the legal profession called precedent, and it takes certain elements of proof to overturn existing precedent, does it not?
It does.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about Justice Gorsuch and Kavanaugh's book that they wrote, and that I think the foreword was written by Justice Stephen Breyer, and what was said in that book that really addresses what needs to be done today?
It's kind of interesting and amazing that this book came out in 2016. Before they were on the short list to become members of the U.S. Supreme Court. At that time, they were judges of courts of appeals, and about 8 other judges in them co-authored this book called The Law of Judicial Precedent. And that means, when do you follow a prior decision or when do you reverse it? And the Supreme Court has overturned its own cases, like Roe, over 200 times. So it's not unusual. But there are standards by which you do it. And this book put out something kind of new that I hadn't seen before, but one of the reasons for overturning a Supreme Court decision is if it had been met with general dissatisfaction, protest, or severe criticism. And so when in 2017, when Melinda Thibault came and said, "Can we do a petition to the court?" She said, "Has it ever been done before?" I said, "No, I don't think so." She said, "Can it be done?" And I said, "Well, I think so. There's no reason it can't be done. It just hasn't ever been done before." And I was familiar with this book. So the first argument in our petition is that abortion is a crime against humanity. And I want everybody in America to start calling abortion a crime against humanity. And our petition says it's like Dred Scott, the slavery case, which precipitated the Civil War. A crime against humanity is when the government withdraws legal protection from a whole class of human beings. And it was African Americans in the Dred Scott case. After the Civil War, the Supreme Court allowed segregation. They withdrew legal protection from African Americans. But one of their best cases was in 1954, when the Supreme Court reversed its 58-year-old precedent saying separate but equal was equal. The Constitution said equal rights, but the court in 1896, it said separate but equal is okay. So the Supreme Court overruled a 58-year-old precedent. that millions had relied on. It was pretty built into the structure of society like abortion is today. But the Supreme Court finally said, you know, this is not right. We're going to end it. And Justice Kavanaugh, in this very last term, about April of last year, 2020, he overturned a 1972 Supreme Court precedent of the United States, which had allowed less than unanimous jury verdicts in Louisiana. So Roe is 73. They just overturned a 72 decision, one-year-old code. So some people say Roe is settled. That didn't mean anything. And it's not settled. It's been criticized since its beginning.
And
so
I'm gonna stop you there just so, you know, Louisiana had a law that it allowed what? 9 of 12? 10 of 12
yes.
to convict somebody of a crime. And that had been on the books for...
Since 1972. Well, even a little
earlier than that.
In Louisiana, yes.
That's right. It's been there a long time. The civil juries require 9 of 12. The criminal juries required 10 of 12. And then in the Supreme Court, what you're telling us, and who wrote the opinion? Was it Kavanaugh?
Justice Kavanaugh wrote a separate concurrence where he talked a lot about when you overturn Supreme Court decisions. But there was a majority in that, and I don't remember who wrote the opinion, but the majority said you cannot do that. The Constitution says you have a right to jury, and the original Constitution means unanimous jury.
Yeah. And that was overturned by the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
And so now it takes 12 of 12 to convict somebody in Louisiana of a crime.
And to deprive someone of their life and their liberty,
right.
We have a high standard. We need to apply the same kind of high standard in life for the child in the womb. And some people say, do you really believe Roe v. Wade will be overturned? And my answer is absolutely yes, with my whole heart.
I know you told us that Justice Scalia is the one who coined the phrase moral outcry. But when separate but equal, when that decision, that standard was overturned, wasn't there truly a moral outcry in the United States to change that law?
Yes, it wasn't necessarily majority, but there was a strong element and a strong righteous element based on we're made in the image of God. It had a strong Christian element. The whole civil rights movement did. Yeah. And sometimes it takes people who believe we are made in the image of God, and in fact, that's the basis of the problem with abortion. Instead of saying this is a human being made in the image of God, we say it's just a piece of tissue. Or Planned Parenthood and other providers of abortion say it's just a product of conception.
Well, the actual Roe versus Wade decision, didn't the court basically refer to science at the time? The scientific evidence at the time did not reveal when life really existed. And over the years, it's evolved to where we know life existed at conception, and that was not the opinion of the knowledge of the court at the time in 1973 when they issued that opinion. But today it is.
That's right.
So,
that's the second argument of our petition, because we say new evidence shows life begins at conception. And some people are worried about, for example, say Justice Roberts and what his opinions are. But I believe he'll write an opinion that to maintain the respect for the court, he'll say the Supreme Court did the best job it could in 1973, but quoting Roe v. Wade, it said, at this state in the development of man's knowledge, the judiciary does not know when life begins.
Right.
Well, under the law of precedent, going back to the book and the law, when science changes, the law changes. It's considered a major change in circumstances. And in the 1980s, we began to have DNA evidence. That didn't come into courts, and you're a very accomplished lawyer. You may have seen cases where DNA evidence proves someone's guilt or innocence.
That's correct.
Came out in the 80s after Roe v. Wade. And if you took a sample of that infant life in the womb and a sample from the woman's arm, sent them anonymously to a DNA lab, you'd get back a report that said this is two separate living human beings. And if you send a third one from a frog, they'd say, no, that's not a human being, that's a frog. And so that sonograms then came out in the 90s, and genetic testing and all of the genetic things came out in the 2000s. So it's undeniable today that abortion is killing human beings. And even in 2007, Gonzalez v. Carhart, the court said, some women come to regret aborting the infant life they once created and sustained. See brief of Sandra Kano, Doe of Dovey Bolton,
Yeah.
and 180 women hurt by abortion that we represented in that case. Because our third argument is abortion hurts women, and now we have over 4,660 legally admissible testimonies that we give to courts and legislatures showing them that abortion hurts women. And in the Gonzalez case, the court cited the women's testimonies where they say, I was devastated. I have nightmares. I have inability to bond with my other children. I have anniversary reactions of grief and sorrow, like Norma McCorvey did, who was the Roe of Roe v. Wade. Every year around the anniversary, she felt guilty for another 1 million deaths.
Yeah.
She knew she'd been forgiven by the Lord Jesus Christ. She became a Christian, was baptized as a Roman Catholic after being baptized in a swimming pool by Protestant groups, but she still felt the guilt of the consequence, and many women feel that. So our third argument is abortion hurts women.
And before you leave that subject, you actually represented her and tried to get her back in front of the Supreme Court, and they refused to hear the case.
That's right. Now, that doesn't mean they ruled against her.
Yeah.
They get 9,000 applications a year, and they take maybe 80 or 90 cases. So 99% of the times, they reject you, and that has no precedential value. So they didn't reject your arguments, just said, we don't want to talk to you. Because they wanted to do abortion back then. And there was one affidavit. We had 1,000 affidavits from women, and they declined to hear it at that time. But I believe we now have 6 judges on the court who have an open mind about abortion. And justices should be open-minded about something. And I believe that some of them, maybe even all 6, sort of believe that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. And some people say, well, it was wrong. Why don't they just change it? That's not enough under the law of precedent. So we call it a crime against humanity. New evidence shows abortion is killing a human being. Now we know abortion hurts women. And so the court said in 92, in Casey, women have devastating psychological consequences. In the Gonzalez case, when they upheld the ban on partial birth abortion, they said severe depression and loss of esteem can follow it. And they cited the 2 pages of our brief where the women's testimonies was. We know what influenced the court. It was the power of testimony. How do we overcome Satan? By the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony.
Yeah.
But you have to have that in court too.
Yeah.
You know? And so the fourth argument is brand new. And what killed us in 1992, when the court reevaluated Roe, they said, we're going to put an end to the controversy for all time, and we're going to reduce the strength of the abortion right. We're going to allow informed consent and waiting periods and things like that. But women have come to rely upon it. And under the law of precedence, reliance interest is one of the factors. Will people be hurt or not? Well, today, our fourth argument is that every single state has a network of social services and something called the safe haven law, where no woman has to take care of a baby if she doesn't want to. Roe was dealing with the problem of unwanted child care. The Roe court said it would be disturbing for the family and hard on the woman. And I represent thousands of women hurt by abortion. They had, some of them, good reasons to need help. And they thought abortion was the solution. But it's not, they found out. And the abortion industry lied to them. Well, today, under the safe haven law, a woman can relinquish her child by giving it to a hospital emergency room or a fire station or other designated safe place by the state in all 50 states. You have to do it within a certain period after birth. I believe it's 30 days in Louisiana, 60 days in Texas, 3 days in California, 1 year in South Dakota. So, you know, you have to check it out, but you just give the baby. And so in exchange for a freedom from 18 years of obligation to care for a child, the state is now saying, don't kill the baby. If we banned abortion, if any state, like Arkansas that just passed a bill, that if it goes into effect, no woman would have to care for babies. So a ban would say, don't kill the baby, don't hurt yourself, give us the baby. And the last argument is, what's going to happen to all those babies? Well, the fact is, this is major change today. There are 1 to 2 million women every year waiting to adopt newborn children. So instead of killing the baby and hurting herself, the woman can give the baby to the state, no cost, no legal obligation. It's equally available to the rich and the poor. She doesn't have to travel to another state. There are more fire stations and hospitals in every state than there are abortion facilities. Right. And then the state will simply give it to the homes that are waiting to provide a loving solution.
And you made an important point, too. During the process, the health care of the mother who's pregnant is all taken care of.
Exactly. And we all want to be concerned for women. I'm concerned for women. I represent thousands of women. So if you're low income in every state, your medical care is paid for up to the moment and including delivery.
Right.
And you can get social services along the way. And there's over 3,000 pregnancy help centers across the country that will help you through that and help you learn to parent. The first thing is to help people keep the baby if they want. But legally, they don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to have a good reason. In our opinion, it's the legal right of a woman in every state. And if someone's considering abortion, they might just consider using the safe haven in their state. Get the free pregnancy care from the state, and then let that baby have a new life. I consider it justice and mercy.
Right.
It's justice for the baby. Don't kill a human being, and then don't feel that guilt yourself. And if you need help, we as a society now help you. It's a government safety net in every state. So give us the baby, and there's 1 to 2 million people waiting to adopt newborn children every year.
I want to remind the audience that you're listening to Allan Parker, who is an incredible lawyer in America today. He graduated from the University of Texas School of Law in 1979. He was an associate editor of the Law Review, which is a great honor. He was Order of the Coif, which means he finished in the top of his class, the top 10%. He was Order of Barristers. He's Phi Beta Kappa, so he's one of the brightest minds in law today who is out advocating for the rights of children and women, and we're so grateful to have him on the program today. Now, Allan, before we stop, I want you to comment on what the states are doing today to get this issue back before the Supreme Court. What laws are being passed? I know you testified in the Arkansas legislature recently, but there's 10 other states that have passed heartbeat legislation and things like it. Am I correct?
You are correct.
So share with us what you know, what's going on, because we're all hopeful that this issue gets back before the Supreme Court soon.
All right. Well, thank you for your kind words about me, and I'm honored to be a part of this. But everyone can be a part of this, and I want to make that clear. Under this book, The Law of Precedent, every signature on the Moral Outcry at themoraloutcry.com is evidence of reason to reverse Roe v. Wade, and it's powerful. We did a scroll with 250,000 of them on a scroll that's 160 feet long, 5 feet wide to get 250,000 names, almost 250,000 right under it. And we rolled that out in Arkansas. That's one of the states I want to talk about in response to your question. We have over 350,000 signatures now. We'd like over 1 million eventually. And it's powerful. It helped convince Arkansas. We rolled out that scroll in the rotunda and up to the states of the Senate. So everyone who signed it up to that point is part of creating a culture that says, no, abortion is not a right, it's a crime against humanity,
yeah.
And put them on defensive. So Arkansas has passed a complete ban based on abortion, based on the Moral Outcry petition. The 5 reasons I went out to are the legislative findings. So when you sign the Moral Outcry petition, you're supporting Arkansas. And we're going to help defend that. But we also help defend all these bills. We filed an amicus brief with 336,000 names in a case that's right before the Supreme Court now, the Mississippi ban on abortion after 15 weeks. It just bans late-term abortions. Right. And we filed a brief on behalf of Melinda Thibault, the founder, and 375 women who had had late-term abortions. And we gave the court thousands of affidavits and legally admissible documents from women who had abortions. So there's that. I'd say there's 10 to 15 cases in the next 1 to 3 years that are on their way to the Supreme Court. Once you pass a law, it takes about 1 to 3 years to get to the Supreme Court. I think there's 10 cases, 10 states have passed heartbeat bills, and that bans abortion when a detectable heartbeat can be found, usually at about 6 weeks. There are states like Alabama that's passed a total and complete ban, and there are incremental legislation. And people say, well, when is it going to happen? Any case in which the abortion industry is saying, you can't do that because of Roe v. Wade, even like a simple thing like a hospital admitting privileges, the Supreme Court could say, you're right, but we're going to reverse Roe v. Wade at this time. So anytime they're claiming Roe for their defense, it's up for grabs. Now, in the Louisiana case, the Louisiana Attorney General did not ask them to reverse it. And in the Mississippi case, they're not really asking that it be reversed because they're not trying to ban every abortion. They're just trying to let us ban late-term abortion. So it could be an incremental case or it could be a big case like Arkansas. When the court is ready, and I'm a Christian, I believe in prayer, and I believe if members of the audience believe in prayer, they should be praying for those in authority. The Bible says, pray for those in authority. And the Supreme Court has a lot of authority under the Constitution. And so we should be praying for them to end this. Abortion is the greatest injustice in the world today. There's nothing worse. We're killing 600,000 to 800,000 children a year. We've killed 61 million. And the blood is on our hands as a nation. And that's the reason to call it a crime against humanity. And it devastates women. And when the Supreme Court reverses Roe v. Wade, I believe either in the main case or in a footnote, they'll say, by the way, the two women whose cases we're reversing today, Norma McCorvey, the Roe of Roe v. Wade, and Sandra Cano, the Doe of Doe v. Bolton, the companion case to Roe, the two cases brought abortion together and brought it on demand all across America. They'll say, by the way, these two women asked us to reverse their cases.
Right.
And we are now joining them in correcting this injustice while providing freedom for women from unwanted child care. Now we can say, don't kill that baby. Don't hurt yourself, please. Even if you're not one of the ones that might get hurt, how do you know? It's a hugely risky thing, and it's devastating, can provide decades of grief. And our women testify to that. And there's nothing, the most truthful evidence in court about what some injury does to you is your own testimony, not what some social scientist researcher says. You know how that abortion affected you. Our women are very powerful witnesses.
Allan, there's a couple of more areas that I would like to cover with you, and I think the public really needs to know. One is the play on words, and I call them oxymorons a lot of time, that they refer to Planned Parenthood, which is obnoxious to me. It's not a Planned Parenthood at all. So I want you to comment on these choice of words that are used by I guess they want to call themselves pro-choice faction of politics that promote abortions, and Planned Parenthood who's behind them. So what thoughts have you given to the use of those words? We know what the Word of God says. You can speak life or speak death, and they're speaking death to people with the use of words that I call oxymorons because they're just the opposite of what they say they are.
Yes.
Is that a fair?
It is. And let me say something. Everything I know about abortion came from women who actually had abortions. And we have thousands of testimonies, legally admissible written testimonies. So when you say Planned Parenthood, I think this may have been Abby Johnson, who was one of their employees of the year, and then who came to understand sort of when she saw a sonogram-guided abortion that it really was killing a child, and she came out of Planned Parenthood. I think she calls them Planned Unparenthood.
Right.
Because they don't really encourage people to be parents. They do a huge number of abortions. They are the number one abortion provider in America. So they're not helping people to be parents. And they don't lead them into adoption and other things. And they make a lot of money off of abortions. The other thing is they just tell people they like to use choice, freedom of choice. Choice to do what? This is what they hide from women. And I believe there's a lot of deception in the whole abortion industry. And just think about it from, say, a basic. Abortion is one of the most controversial issues in America today, right? If you went to a professional advisor of any type, a stock advisor, a lawyer, a doctor, you would, and there was a controversial issue, wouldn't you expect them to at least tell you both sides of the controversy and let you make the decision?
Absolutely.
But they do not present anything of the other side. They only present, it's just a mass of tissue. And it's like saying Hunter Lundy is a mass of tissue. In one sense you are. We're tissue, blood, bones, but we are much more than that. That's what gives us dignity as human beings. That's why we're protected by law, and the right to life is protected in the Constitution. They don't show women pictures of fetal development. They sue to set aside sonogram laws where the woman would be shown what's in her womb.
Yeah.
If you got a broken arm, Hunter, don't you think most doctors, before they're going to do surgery, say, well, here's your broken bone, here's what we're going to do. Is that all right with you? Do you consent? And then you sign the consent forms. It's just basic good medicine to get fully informed consent. They sue to stop women from seeing what's really in the womb, because some of our women have used, like I remember one particular, they put a dot on a piece of paper and said, that's all it is, we're just getting rid of that. Or they use the phrase TOP as the initial. We're going to terminate your pregnancy, termination of pregnancy, that's all we're doing. Oh, well, you're going to make me unpregnant. Norma McCorvey, in her affidavit to the Supreme Court, when we asked them to reverse it, she actually worked in abortion clinics. Well, let me go back first. When she became the plaintiff in Roe v. Wade, she was talking about abortion. She says in her mind, she kind of thought of it like a giant John Wayne movie. We're going to abort the mission. And she didn't want to be pregnant, and they were going to make her unpregnant. Right. So, most women, that's what they want. But they don't explain the nature and consequences of the procedure. It's one of the questions we ask on our Operation Outcry form. Were you adequately informed of the nature?
I call it desensitizing the minds of women across the world as to what the truth is.
Yes.
And so they use these words, the unborn words, and the Planned Parenthood and the pro-choice. All of this is an effort to, again, deny them of the truth, deny them of the knowledge, and desensitize them as to what's going to happen. Now, those are my words, Allan. You're the expert on this subject
Well,
matter.
those are good words. And here's some other words that we ought to use on our side that are strong words that have actually been affirmed by the Supreme Court, and that the abortion industry doesn't tell them. The Supreme Court in 1992, in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, said we're going to allow informed consent periods and everything so women can be warned of the dangers. Otherwise, they may suffer, quote, devastating psychological consequences. The Supreme Court said women can suffer devastating psychological consequences. That is not told to women when they go in to get an abortion. Another phrase the Supreme Court used in Gonzalez v. Carhart in 2007 was, severe depression and loss of esteem can follow an abortion. That is rarely disclosed, maybe in some cases. But then the court also said, some women come to regret aborting the infant life they once created and sustained. And they never use the term infant life.
Yeah.
And that is true. And the court has said it. So we should say that. I suggest our side not use words like preborn or unborn, because that creates a separation. There's no emotional warmth in that name. Nobody thinks of us as, well, I was preborn once. No. Children in the womb is what, child in the womb. We used to say when you're pregnant, she's with child. Have you noticed that's desensitized the culture?
Very much.
And we ought to start saying that. Oh, you're with child.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And everybody, let's get that in the culture, because that's what's in a mother's womb, a child.
And I want to close by asking one more question. What are the men's rights to these abortions? What do fathers have to say to a mother who wants to abort her child and who's been sucked up by Planned Parenthood and following their game plan? Do they have rights?
At this date, no. And that came about because of the court's decision in Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 1992, where they said a woman has a right to abortion and the man doesn't even have to be consulted. And he can't object, he can't agree, he has no rights whatsoever. So we get calls sometimes from a man saying, I want to save my baby. She's going to have an abortion. What can I do? And I say to her, there's nothing legally you can do to stop it, but you could give her some of this information that the abortion is not going to give her. Give her some of our testimonies from women. Give them psychological studies, like in the British Journal of Psychiatry. There was a peer-reviewed study that showed women have an 81% increased risk of mental health problems from abortion and such. So you can try to talk her, but nothing. Now, the moral outcry petition, which would reverse Roe v. Wade and allow states to ban abortion if they want to, and we believe should, because abortion is a crime against humanity, it also says women can use the safe haven law. And if a woman used that, she's completely free of the baby, but the father should go down and sign up for a paternity register like every state has and say, I think I'm the father of a baby, and I think the woman may drop her off at a hospital. DNA testing can prove with absolute certainty who's the father, and obviously in most cases the biological father who's trying to save his child would be the best parent for that baby.
Right.
So it really takes care of the woman and the man. It's the feminist dream for women in some sense, total freedom to be free of childcare. And I say, I'm not arguing that's a good policy or bad. I think the best thing is to take care of a child that you conceive, but if your circumstances don't allow it, every woman has the right to have total freedom. Even today, some women get abortions because they don't want to have anything to do with the man. And he's telling things like, I'm going to get that baby and I'm going to make you pay child support, and it's just easier to kill the human being and be done with it. If you had a one-night stand, many women don't want to have anything else to do with that man, but a biological child does connect you. Yeah. The moral outcry takes care of that. And safe haven law, which already exists, she can simply drop the baby off at the fire or walk out of the hospital, which if you're poor, Medicaid will pay for, and tell the nurses, I'm going to safe haven this baby. I'm walking out without it. They'll take care of it, and then they'll transfer it to the 1 million to 2 million women in America waiting to adopt newborn babies.
Well, I appreciate your comments. You've probably just educated thousands of men of what their rights are and can be if they will just pay attention and get educated on protecting that baby. You and I know that all things are possible with God and that He can heal any wound, but we also know that this abortion really attacks women in their future. You talked about in your number 3rd element a while ago for the reasons to overturn Roe versus Wade, being the psychological and I call it mental effect on women in later years. You probably have actually looked at suicide rates that may have occurred from that, but I haven't looked at the statistics, but I have a feeling that they're very high as a result of this devastating act that women went through many years ago because of lack of knowledge. And you know the word says we perish for our lack of knowledge, is what Hosea 4:6 says. And I think the lack of knowledge has led to so much devastation, but God's blessed us with that knowledge today, and we just got to get the hearts and minds of people to change, especially the 6 that should be ready on the Supreme Court to overturn this thing. And so I know I'm pouring out my heart to you right now and what I feel about this, but I think those things, the suicide rate should be pointed out, and the other things. I know you have done that, but I just want the audience to know that those statistics are real, and these women are adversely affected for years and years to come. Not that the blood of Jesus can't overcome everything, because it can, but they have to cry out to have it happen. And sometimes it's just a process that they have to work through for those wounds, because as Allan said a minute ago, every year on the annual day, this lady who was put up to be the plaintiff in that case just mourned for millions of deaths every year. That's such a powerful statement. But I want to thank you for coming today to the program. Do you have any closing thoughts or closing remarks that you want to make?
I would. Even South Dakota has passed 2 laws requiring the abortionist to tell the women that they have an increased risk of suicide and suicidal thoughts. And that was upheld in court, even though Planned Parenthood tried to attack it and say, no, that's not true. And the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that, and they didn't even appeal to the Supreme Court. So some states, there is scientific evidence to support that, and there's women's testimonies. And many of the women feel like murderers, and this is the language they use about themselves. And you read the testimonies, and if women go to our website at the Justice Foundation, there are some resources for post-abortion recovery programs. You can feel like a murderer, and most people don't have any experience with killing anyone. So it's not something most people have an experience of. It can be very devastating. Some people call it a moral injury. One reason that PTSD can be bad for people in war, some of them have participated in killing, and if they didn't feel it was right, it can have a huge amount of guilt. And I say, thank God we have some restraint on our ability to kill each other.
Yeah.
It keeps us alive somewhat. But there are resources that you can be referred to by others, outside counseling groups at minimal cost or free. And I would encourage women to go to our website. If they would like the Supreme Court to know how their abortion hurt them, they can also give us their testimony on the Justice Foundation website, and we will protect their identity. We ask them whether to tell us use their first name or initial or full name. And if they haven't told their whole family about it, we suggest initials, you know.
Do they go to justicefoundation.org, or what is the...
Yes, and you can get 3 resources on that website. One is signing the Moral Outcry petition. If you're a woman who's had an abortion through Operation Outcry, you can give us your testimony. And one of the harms to women from abortion is once you make abortion legal, it allows other people to force a woman to have an abortion to solve their problem. 3 most common are adult parents forcing a minor daughter to have an abortion to solve the family's problem. Number 2 is a man forcing a woman to abort his child because he doesn't want it. She may be super happy. No. And then number 3 is human trafficking, prostitution. The pimp is trying to force her to have an abortion. We have resources on our website to stop all of that, because just right now everybody needs to know forced abortion is already illegal in every state in America. Voluntary abortion is legal under Roe v. Wade, and we wish it wasn't, but involuntary abortion is illegal in every single state, and we have a Dear Police letter, we have school counselor letter, we have Dear Parent letter. We have a lot of legal tools that anyone watching this program can use. Just download the material and give it to who you need to give it to. The Dear Parent letter stops about 95% of forced abortions of minors just when they find out what they're doing is illegal. So it's a very powerful self-help tool for anybody.
Well, this has been very enlightening, very educational, and we are joining you in prayer to see that Roe versus Wade is overturned. So thank you so much, Allan, for being here today.
Thank
God
you
bless.
very much.